Hi guys, welcome back to my channel where we continue to speak about privacy law issues and everything about privacy that relates to your business and to your business operations every day. So today we speak about privacy policy and creating a compliant privacy policy in 10 simple steps which will help be privacy compliant in your privacy operations. So let's begin. Let's start with defining the privacy policy. Basically, it's a legal document that explains how your organization handles any customer, any client's data that your company collects or processes from your users in its actually everyday business operations. A good policy will protect your company by explaining which data you collect and how do you collect them and how your company actually plans to process them, use them in everyday practice. Privacy policies serve specific purposes. First of all, it actually compels businesses to act more transparently. It also gives your individual more information about your privacy practices and how actually it also helps them to control their information which you hold about them. Privacy policies can help build trust between your users, about your visitors, for example, if you speak about a website, and it helps build trust relationships between your customers and you as a company. Let's speak about actually a scope of entities or a scope of companies who actually need privacy policy. Basically, if you or your company collects any type of personal information, you will need a privacy policy. If you run a website, a blog, a mobile app, or just any type of public platform, you will for sure need a privacy policy to be publicly placed on your resource. This is requirement of most privacy laws. And to ensure legal compliance and customer transparency, you'll need to make sure that your privacy policy is publicly available and it's displayed on your resources. To create a compliant privacy policy, we will follow the 10 simple steps we will talk about today. So let's start with the first one, defining applicable privacy laws. You will need to take time to verify what data privacy legislation applies to your business. And you will need to familiarize yourself with all these guidelines, with all the requirements which affect your business, your privacy practices, to be able to prepare a compliant privacy policy. For example, you can watch my previous video where I explain in detail how to define this list of applicable privacy laws, and this will help you to get the previous understanding of what we are talking about. Identifying relevant privacy laws is really crucial. It is essential to understand the specific requirements and obligations of your company imposed by each applicable law. And you will need to check such kind of regulation as mentioned on this slide, but it's not the whole list of all possible privacy laws worldwide, so be sure to check the requirements of how to do it correctly. Step 2. First of all, you will need to perform a compliant privacy audit. You will need to do a thorough privacy audit on your website or maybe on an app to determine and record every piece of personal information actually you collect from your users, including through cookies or other trackers placed on the websites. To do this, you can do a manual privacy audit along with the technical cookie audit. All these things in combination will help you to prepare a really compliant privacy audit. One of the benefits gained from doing this action is to reduce the risk of exposing your organization to bad publicity as a result of privacy breaches. A company's own privacy audit may also be done to demonstrate that it's provided protection to users, and you'll do everything in accordance with best privacy industries, with best privacy standards, right? So do not forget about this step because it's really crucial, and you will need to start with this before moving forward with preparing a privacy policy. As a next step, I will suggest determine which data you collect and categorize them. Some laws, for example, give a defined list of personal data you may collect, and they categorize them. Start by identifying all the types of personal data your business collects, such as names, email address, phone numbers, IP address, financial information, all other types of possible identifiers. So it will be like your first step. Then you will need to categorize them according to the degree of sensitivity and the level of protection they require under relevant regulations. This may include sensitive personal information, which is subject to stricter guidelines under laws like the amended GDPR and CCPA. Sensitive data requires extra protection measures, and they comes with like some legal restrictions. That's why you need to perform this step to be sure that each type of personal data that you collect that is properly protected. Okay, so what we'll have as a next step. You also must know how you plan on collecting each piece of personal data and explain these practices in your privacy policy and clearly define it for your users. There are several ways of collecting data, and they can be divided into 3 groups, as you can see on this slide. So first of all, in most cases, your users voluntarily provide some scope of personal data which you ask them to do this. This is information you actively give to a website or a service. How do you do this actually? Sometimes you ask this through website forms. You can also ask your users, for example, to fill in some user registration form in your website or in your app, or sometimes you ask them to enter some payment information necessary for the services provision. The next group is a group for when you collect personal information through third parties or through publicly available resources, which we also refer to this group. It can be done through social media. For example, if you log into your website using your social media credentials, the website may access your personal information. Or, for example, you can also collect some piece of information through public records. Websites may collect information about users from publicly available resources, such as, for example, addresses, email addresses, company addresses, or etc. Sometimes company also collect information about users from data brokers. A lot of companies do such kind of business like their main category of their business operations. Such kind of companies, they collect and sell data about consumers from a variety of sources. But be sure to check whether this method is legal according to the applicable privacy law. And second and third group of possible ways of collecting information, when your website or your app automatically collect some pieces of personal information through a website or another web resources. Sometimes websites can gather information about user activity without explicitly providing it. It can be done through different cookies, through different trackers, login files, device information, and all this type of information that can be seen as technical information, but actually, according to most progressive privacy laws nowadays, this information is also referred to actually personal information, and it is also protected. So what is next? Our next step, we can see that we'll need to define the purposes for personal data processing. Under most legislation like the GDPR and CCPA, you'll also need to state for what purposes you use personal data. For instance, GDPR requires not only indicating the purposes of personal data processing, but also the justification of each of these purposes. So actually you need to have legal basis for the processing of this piece of information. Processing basically means using personal data in any way, including collecting, transferring, disclosing maybe, or sharing to other third parties. You'll need to do it. And all these types of activity, they all refers to the processing. And the purposes for the processing of personal data, they must be known for all your users, for all individuals, before you actually start performing all these actions. So they need to give your informed consent to this processing. What is about the next step? Under most privacy laws, you shall define and categorize all third parties with whom you are planning to share personal data of users. Third party means a natural or a legal person. It can be a public authority as well, agency or body. that processes this personal information collected by you about users, about natural persons from whom you're collecting this piece of information. So third party can be any of the following. It can be the business partner, the business vendor with whom your consumer intentionally plan to interact within your service, within your website. So it can be like a part of the services which you provide, and you need help of third party, like I mentioned, for example, business vendor who can maintain this process on your behalf. In this case, we will talk about third party, about a processor. Or for example, we can talk about a contractor whom you're engaged in your business operations, also to perform some actions on your behalf. In both of these cases, we will speak about these parties as third parties, third parties in the role of processors. So be aware to mention all of them in your privacy policy, and to be sure that your users or your website visitors, they are informed about all this information through your privacy policy as well. As a next step, you will need to give your users understanding of the scope of personal data, of privacy rights that they have. And be aware that different laws, different privacy laws, they grant different scopes of privacy rights to data subjects. So you need to check all applicable laws first to ensure that all privacy rights are ensured by your company. For example, the GDPR defines 8 rights that users have when it comes to the processing of their personal data. Some of them you can see on this slide. But as I've mentioned, do not forget to check all other laws, as we talked about earlier today in slide 2, because sometimes different laws, they will give some specific rights to users which other users from another state, another jurisdiction cannot have. That's why it is so important to define your scope of audience, your audience first, your clients, your jurisdictions, and only then you will need to move forward, like defining the scope of rights. So this is also important step, and it's closely related to the previous one. So that's why we move forward. Step 8. You also might include a clause in your privacy policy explaining how you plan to keep your users' personal information stored safely and securely. All security measures can be divided into 3 groups. So first of all, it will be technical measures. They can be defined as the measures and controls afforded to systems and technological aspects of an organization, such as devices, networks, and hardware. It can be a variety of different measures, such as identity and access management, data loss prevention, encryption and pseudonymization, and a lot of other possible technical measures which are defined by different privacy laws worldwide. The second group of measures can be defined, can be organized, and called organizational measures. By these measures, we mean internal policies, internal practices, organizational methods, standards, controls and audits that the company in the role as controllers ensure the security of personal data. It can be, for example, third-party risk management, policy management, all other types of internal policies which help company define and organize their security measures, like through their internal practices. And the third part of measures, third group, this is like administrative security measures. And they actually refer to policies, procedures, or guidelines that company define and create for their personal or business practices in accordance with their organization's security goals. It can be like incident response plan, it can be different data breach policies, and any other measures that you will also find in different privacy laws. So all these 3 groups of measures, they are really crucial, and they are all important for your company. They have different purposes, but they all their main purpose in general is for sure to ensure that your company have a high standard of safety, on security, personal data that you collect about your users, about your data subject, whatever. The next step, you will need to think and not forget about updating your privacy policy on a regular basis. You need to inform people about the progress for making changes in your privacy policy and how actually you will notify your consumers. For sure, to do this, you will also need to add a clause in your privacy policy where you will mention how you will figure it out. Yeah, you must regularly update your privacy policies to comply with the data protection legislation and notify users of their rights. And how actually this information is collected, stored, and used if you make some changes to these operations. So whenever you make any changes in your business practices, in your privacy practices, be sure that your users are stayed updated to all these changes. And the last but not the least step which we'll talk today is defining contact details in your privacy policy. You should include contact information in your privacy policy about your company, about person responsible within your company, so the users can reach you regarding any privacy-related questions, inquiries that they may have throughout communication and engaging with your services. This usually includes an email address of your company or a person responsible within your company, postal address sometimes, and sometimes for sure a phone number. So it depends. But a minimum set of contact details you will need to include in your privacy policy as well. So guys, today we wrapped up everything I wanted to talk about, and now you can be aware that you can know the simple 10 steps which will help you come to the compliant privacy policy. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments, I will gladly comment and answer to you. So you're welcome, and see you in the next videos. Bye bye guys.